This is the Canon 24mm tilt-shift lens. But what is a tilt-shift lens? What does it do? Why would you use one? Well, in this video, I'm going to try to explain it, and I'm going to tell you why this is one of my favorite lenses to carry. Stick around. So this is obviously a pretty unique lens. A tilt-shift lens has some really great uses in photography, particularly for product photography and for architecture. The way that a tilt-shift lens works, or a perspective control lens works, is you can move it in ways that you can't move a conventional lens. You can tilt the lens from side to side, you can shift it up and down, back and forth, in all different directions. This is the 24mm version. Canon also makes a 17mm version, which I've used. There's also, I think, a 45mm and a 90mm version as well. And some other companies make them also. But I started using this Canon 24mm tilt shift many years ago, and I really fell in love with it right away. And it has a permanent place in my bag. I never go anywhere really without this lens. So let me show you how it moves around, and then I'll give you kind of a visual display of the effect that all of those movements make in the computer. So the tilting effect basically is done by turning a knob on the camera that allows you to tilt the front of the lens back and forth like that. Now you can rotate the lens, you can tilt it back and forth up and down, you can tilt it diagonally. There's a lot of independent movements you can make with this. And the shifting feature is fairly similar, where you can turn a knob on the side and shift the lens up and down, and you can also rotate it and you can shift it side to side or diagonally as well. Let me show you that from the side so you can see how it's moving. See, the whole lens moves when I turn the knob. But what does that actually do to your image, and why would you want to use it? I'm going to jump into the computer. I'm going to show you a couple of short videos that I took basically displaying how each of these independent features works. And then I'll show you some pictures and some examples of how I use them. So the way that the tilting effect works is it allows you to move your image circle around in relation to the sensor. So all lenses create a circular image. The reason that your pictures are rectangular is because your sensor is rectangular. But all lenses create a circular image, and then right in the center of that image is where the sensor is, and that's basically your photograph. So the way that the tilt-shift lens works is, rather than having an image circle that basically just barely covers that rectangular sensor, is it has an image circle that's much wider than the sensor. So shooting a 24mm tilt-shift lens, the image circle that it creates might be something more equivalent to like a 12 or 15mm lens, much bigger. And then, the center is still what you're getting, on the sensor is the center of that. So then when you're moving the image circle around, the sensor stays in place. So if you shift your lens up, then you're going to be basically getting just the bottom portion of the whole image circle on the sensor, and then if you shift it down, you're getting just the top portion. And what that allows you to do is that allows you to keep your lens basically parallel to the ground, or level, and move it around to be able to control your perspective related to architecture. So let me jump into the computer. I want to show you a video that I took of my favorite lighthouse and show you exactly how this effect works. All right, so now this shot here is with the lens exactly parallel to the ground. Everything's level. And now I'm going to point it upwards because I want to get the actual lighthouse in the shot. So by pointing the lens upward, you can see what's happening is now the lighthouse is leaning over to the back a little bit. That flagpole on the left is leaning towards the back, and the little building is leaning actually in the other direction towards the back also. Everything is kind of converging towards the center point on top. And it's not a bad picture, it's not a terrible thing, but for architecture, you like to have nice, clean, straight lines. So let me bring it back to level again, and then I'm going to show you what happens when I shift the lens upwards to get just the top portion of the image circle. So now, shift it up like this, you can see I'm getting basically the same composition as I was before, except now all of my lines are nice and straight. And I can't, stress enough how for architecture this is something that's really important. Now, like I said, the other picture wasn't terrible, but for me, I really like the effect of having, in tall buildings or any buildings at all, having nice straight lines rather than that tilted back keystone effect. Now, there are other applications as well, but that's really the main reason that you want to use that. And like I said, it doesn't just have to be up and down. It can be side to side. You can rotate this lens, and you can move it diagonally. There's all different ways that you can move it. So I'll show you some examples here of photographs that I've taken using the shift effect on this lens. Used just as a 24mm lens alone, even without tilting or shifting or anything, it really is a fabulous, sharp, beautiful lens. And one of the reasons is you're only using the center portion of the entire image circle. So you're going to get super sharpness from corner to corner. You're not really going to have any vignette at all. Everything's going to look really nice across the image because, like I said, you're only using the center portion of that image circle. Now, could you do the same thing using a much wider lens and then cropping a small portion of it afterwards? Yes, you can, but you're not using all of your megapixels. You're going to be cropping a portion, and you're not really using your lens and your sensor to the fullest in those situations. So now let's talk about the tilt. This one's a little bit harder to wrap your head around. The tilt basically is where you can move the front of the lens from side to side or up and down. Basically what this does is this changes your plane of focus. So the plane of focus is, in all situations, parallel to the sensor. So right now, the beginning of my depth of field, the beginning of my focal plane, is probably right around here somewhere. And, a foot or two behind me, it's going to be out of focus as well. So everything within that range from front to back is going to be in focus. So now, if I put my hand over here, you can see my hand is out of focus. My face is still in focus because the focal plane starts about here. And now if you're using a smaller aperture, like f16 or f22, that depth of field is going to become greater, where something right in front of the camera like this might still be in focus and something way back there might still be in focus also. And if you're using a wider aperture like f2, f1.4, that's going to be even narrower, where the focus might begin right here at the beginning of my face, right at my eyes, and my ear might be out of focus. That's how shallow the depth of field is. But the focal plane is always parallel to the sensor from front to back. What you're doing is when you're tilting the lens, you're actually tilting the plane of focus. So where the focus begins here and ends here, if I'm going to tilt my lens, it's actually going to bring it to where it's more diagonal to the sensor like this. So the plane of focus is going to run diagonal through the image. So you can have something over here, like my hand would be in focus, my face would be in focus, and the wall behind me over here or over my shoulder would also be in focus. But anything to either side, my shoulders in that shot might be out of focus. The focal plane runs, and the more extreme that you tilt it, the greater the effect's going to be, to where it's almost, perpendicular to the sensor. So in situations where you want to use this is, if you have something, you want to get a certain depth of field, you want to have something right in front of the lens, like inches in front of the lens in sharp focus, and something way off in a distance in sharp focus also. But you can't use a small aperture, or even if you use the smallest aperture that you can, you're still not going to be able to get that depth of field. This allows you to get greater control over your depth of field by choosing exactly where you want that focus point to be. And like I said, you can rotate the lens so you can have it to where the plane of focus goes from down below to up above. And once you start using it, you can really see what the effect is. And another situation where you want to use it is to maybe take out some distractions. Using a wide angle lens like 24mm, you're going to end up, if you're shooting a wide shot, you're going to get a lot of things in the frame. You're going to get a lot of things that are naturally in focus. But if you're shooting a busy image, where you have a lot of people walking around, you want to kind of blur that out where you normally wouldn't be able to. You can shift the plane of focus. You can tilt your lens and move the plane of focus in a different way, so that everything on either side of your subject is now blurred and out of focus. So let me jump in the computer, show you another example using this lighthouse of exactly what that effect looks like in the lens itself. All right, so here's a nice lighthouse shot. You have the boardwalk leading up to it. You have the grass on either side waving in the breeze. It looks nice and everything, but what if I wanted to change the plane of focus and blur the grass on either side? So if I tilt my lens, then you can see how everything on either side blurs out, while the lighthouse and the center of that boardwalk leading up to it are still in sharp focus. It's a really great way to be able to control exactly where you want your focus to be. And for product photography, it's great also because you can shoot really close up macro shots And where the depth of field on a shot like that would normally be super, super shallow, you can actually tilt the lens and get the depth of field, get the plane of focus right where you want it to be on your product. So it's great for product photography also. I'll show you a few more shots here using the tilt effect. You can see the kind of photos I get using that. I love using it for this effect. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of hard, figuring out exactly how much to tilt it sometimes is a little difficult because you're trying to, focus on two distinct areas, a foreground and a background sometimes, and you don't know exactly where that focus is running. So you're trying to compose, in the camera and using your LCD screen. I use it a lot for focusing with this. It's still hard to get the exact focus, but with practice it gets a lot easier. The only drawbacks to this lens is that it's manual focus, but it's kind of okay because you're really slowing yourself down at this point. You're going to be very particular about how you're composing, how you're shooting. So having this manual focus lens, it's not for people running around shots where you need autofocus. Manual focus on a lens like this is fine, so it really isn't a drawback. And like I said, the images that I get with this are second to none. Now there are other lenses on the market that give you similar effects like this that are much, much cheaper, like Lens Babies. The quality isn't, as far as the glass and everything, isn't really anywhere near a lens like this. Those are fun to play with. They give you a nice effect. There are some Lens Babies that are better than others, but for really high quality photographs and high quality glass, you really can't get any better than these Canon tilt shift lenses. So if this is something that interests you, you've ever thought about playing around with it, definitely try one out. If you can rent one and just try it out for the weekend, or take it on a trip and try it out, they're really a lot of fun to use. I've spent sometimes an entire day at Disney Park or on vacation somewhere with just this lens attached to my camera and had a blast. I had a lot of questions myself when I started using this years ago, so if you have any questions, definitely put them in the comments below. If you have anything you want to add to it, definitely put them in the comments below. Also, we'd love to hear from you. But I hope you found this helpful, a little bit of insight into how this thing really works. There's a lot of science involved, a lot of physics, which I don't want to go into. There's places you can search online for that. But this is just the basics of how it works. So I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and click on that little notification bell. This way you get notified every time we post a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.